What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode from the 10-7 MMA Show. And we are back after an exciting weekend of interesting events that have happened in the world of combat sports. And in this case, apparently the biggest show from last weekend was a boxing match, but with two of our most favorite MMA fighters, Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal. Oops, we're going to start off there in one moment. And we have a lot of other interesting things that happened as well. Darren Till won his fight. There's some interesting news about Michael Chandler versus Islam, all this good stuff. So we're going to talk about everything. Before we do, Justin, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Just running some last-minute errands here in Las Vegas. It's 120 degrees out. We are scorched here. This is scorched earth on this side of the world.
I like that. I like the heat, actually. I like Vegas in the summertime. To be honest, I've spent a lot of time in Vegas in the summer, and I really like that desert heat. But yeah, I know most people don't, so I understand. All right. Without further ado, let's get right into the mix. Let's talk about this fight, okay? For those of you guys who haven't been able to see the fight, actually, I thought it was a great fight. I thought it was a cool boxing match. I'm not a boxing fan, but I was into it, obviously, because it's two guys that we saw kick off the BMF belt. Jorge Masvidal, of course, won back in the day, kind of due to a doctor stoppage, so it was an official win. But I think Nate Diaz always felt like he would have done great in the later rounds if it hadn't been stopped due to that doctor stoppage. But we had an amazing fight. Justin, first, let me turn it over to you. I know you watched it. What are your initial thoughts?
I'm not a boxing fan. I think boxing is really boring, man. But I tell you what, when you have guys like Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal stepping in, basically getting out of their comfort zone to go in to test new waters, I love it. Both of these guys collected a great payday. Nate Diaz collecting $500,000, Jorge Masvidal collecting $300,000. I wanted Nate to win this all the way. I really wanted him to win the rematch, especially after Neon came out and said all that nasty shit. I really was rooting for Nate, and Conor McGregor even put like $500,000 on Nate to win, and Nate went in there, did his thing, and I thought Nate won the fight.
Yeah, I did too. I want to talk about that, but hold on. I want to back up for a second. So you mentioned the salaries. You mentioned $500,000 and $300,000. I think that was posted by the California Commission, but Ariel Helwani said today on the MMA Hour that those numbers are incorrect or like they're just partial values. That they made. He said, this is quoting Ariel Helwani, many multiples of $500,000. So I think that may be what the commission published for whatever reason. Maybe it doesn't include back end deals or points on the pay-per-view. I don't know, but he said they made many multiples of that, which I think makes sense. I think they must have both made in the millions and millions of dollars. So anyways, just as a quick correction, but you mentioned that it was a great fight, and you also mentioned that you felt that Nate won. Now, a lot of people are coming out and saying that, like MMA Guru, I know you're not a big fan of him, but I know even Ariel Helwani said that when he was watching it, he felt like Jorge Masvidal won because the strength of the shots that he landed were more significant. And I can get that point of view. It did seem like Jorge was really selecting his shots, and when he was connecting, he was sitting down on those shots, and they appeared to be heavier. But what I want to ask you is, those shots did look harder, but we didn't see Nate ever stumble, ever get, we didn't see him get dizzy. We didn't see him get close to hitting the canvas at any point. So that's the question that I have. Yeah, they looked harder, but they didn't really have an effect. So what do you feel about that?
Well, here's the thing, man. I do agree that I do think Jorge was landing the single harder shots. But when you look at Nate, he was walking Jorge down the whole time. He was controlling the pace of the fight. He was constantly throwing his jab. He threw like 350 jabs throughout the fight. It was a very, very high output on both ends. But again, the pressure, the pace, Nate was constantly moving forward, backing Jorge up, and there was plenty of times where he had him against the ropes. When I say had him against the ropes, not like he was hurt, but literally his back was against the ropes, and Nate's just picking his small shots, and that's what Nate does, man. He pitter patters from afar, and that's why he can last so long. That's why he has such an incredible gas tank. Do I think Jorge was landing the harder shots? Yeah, I do think so. But again, the pace was all Nate Diaz. The output was all Nate Diaz, and to me, in boxing, those really dictate. It's not MMA, man. You can't land that one big shot and just end a match. I mean, you can, but it's less likely in boxing than it is MMA. It's again having those bigger gloves on, those big shots. If he had gloves on, he might have not did get boxing gloves on, so Nate was able to walk through those, weather the storm. He never appeared wobbled, and after he'd eat those big shots, he'd be right back into Jorge's face. Very rarely did I feel Nate was actually on his back heel.
Yeah, you cut out just a tiny bit there, but I think we got the gist of everything you said. And I do agree. I've also heard people say, you know, depending on the commission or depending on the state, sometimes the criteria in judging and boxing in particular can vary slightly. Some give more weight to ringmanship, etc., that or ring control, whatever you want to call it, than others. So I mean, I get that, but I did feel like when I walked away, just me personally, that Nate Diaz had won the fight. Because also that's a subjective measure if you do want to look at the strength of the shots. Now I don't know if this is an official criteria, but the fact that Nate Diaz was never wobbled, was never seemed to be, as you mentioned, on the back foot. It seemed like he was dominating and in control. The question that I have, though, that I always try and ask myself, and I'm by no means an expert when it comes to scoring MMA, especially not boxing, but the question that I always want to ask myself is, since I kind of was rooting for Nate, I think most people were, even though we're all Jorge fans as well, but Nate, you just can't root against him. Does that cloud the judgment? And even Jorge said that at the end of the fight, he thinks that the crowd was feeding into the judges and what they were doing. What do you think about that assertion? Do you think that since the crowd was like 90% pro Nate Diaz, do you think that actually can influence the judges?
Yeah, I think it definitely can, because when you hear, all the fans in a building going crazy when he lands shots or when he's pressing forward, that is, I'm not saying it does influence the judges, but I know it's not going to hurt. It's not the crowd isn't going to go crazy for Nate Diaz, and the judge isn't going to think, well, since the crowd's going crazy, I think Jorge is winning. So I mean, it can only be positive for who the fans are cheering for.
All right, and last question on this, and I have my opinion and my thoughts on this, but what are your thoughts on a trilogy fight? People are talking about, hey, they're 1-1. They won, Jorge won in the mixed martial arts competition. Nate Diaz won in boxing. People were joking around, hey, they should have a third jiu-jitsu match or something. But anyways, forget about that. Do you think they should have a trilogy fight, or is that something you're not super interested in?
To me, it's like I don't really care if they do or not. If they do, I'm going to tune in just because I'm curious. I'm a big Nate Diaz fan. Jake Shields is one of my coaches, and Jake works with Nate a lot. So, I have that secondary, relationship with him per se. So, I mean, if he does fight again, I am going to tune in. But if they never fight each other again, I'm not going to be bummed about it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. So Nate said some interesting things after the fight, talking about Jake Paul, which I'm less interested in. But he did talk about Leon Edwards. Now, I don't know what the chances are that they would even consider giving him. I doubt it would happen, but I would tune in for that. I would love to see a rematch of Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards. Do you think that's even a possibility? And would you be interested in that fight, or do you think Nate would be outmatched?
I'm not really interested in that fight. There's too many guys in line right now. The division is upside down. Too many guys are
Yeah.
calling for a title shot. Too many guys are deserving for a title shot. Nate's, unfortunately, he's getting older, man. He's becoming less relevant in the sport of MMA. He hasn't won an MMA
Mm.
fight in quite some time now. I don't see him going against Leon Edwards, especially for a title shot, especially with what's going on in the division right now.
Yeah, that's probably fair. But I just think it's just fun because Nate is such a beloved. He's might be the second most, or maybe the most, if you consider him still, the most active, beloved fighter in combat sports potentially. I don't know. He's so beloved, so I think that would be cool just from that standpoint. But I think you're 100% right. All right. Well, that was the big story. That was the big fight at the Honda Center. They sold it out, which is super cool. In boxing, which isn't even either of their sports, but it was a really fun fight. If you hadn't had a chance to watch it, I encourage you to watch it somehow if you're able to. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. All right. I want to move on to topic number 2. So this is and we've already been getting some comments, so I'm going to highlight those in a second. This is about something that was in the news over the weekend. It was a big story about Khamzat Chimaev apparently being a part, whether knowingly or unknowingly, and I'm going to say unknowingly, I do think he's innocent, for sure. And I think he probably made a mistake, but I don't think he would have ever done anything like this knowingly. But this is about Khamzat Chimaev basically being a part of what's called a pump and dump scheme. So Jesse on Fire talked about this yesterday in one of his videos. So I first want to give some context. Before I do, let's check out Homework. He is one of somebody following along right now. So he says, I believe Khamzat is innocent as well, because remember, he was one of the first people who joined and promoted Block Asset, the company of Tills. And that is still legit to this day. Okay, fair. And he said, I'm going to believe his manager and his team were fooled by scammers disguising as fans. Just sad because everyone is calling Khamzat. Yeah, I fully believe that this is actually what happened. Let's talk a little bit. Let's see a little bit more from Homework. It's ruining his image and tarnishing his reputation. Okay. These are all sentiments that I 100% agree with. And just to give people context, okay, now I don't know that much about Block Assets, and I don't know that much about sort of like these cryptocurrencies in particular, but I do know what a pump and dump scheme is, and I can explain roughly just in terms of stocks, those types of just basically public assets that you could purchase, right? So a pump and dump would be something like this: somebody going out and who owns a large percentage or a large amount of shares in X stock, right? And they go out and without doing this with valid research and not disclosing that they own a large share of the assets, they might go out and be like, oh my God, this is the next best thing, publicizing it everywhere, posting it on social media and getting people excited about it. Because what happens is, as people's expectations go up about a certain asset or certain equity, that drives the price up, and then more people buy it and you drive the price up. Now, for that person who holds the large amounts of these stock assets, as the price drives up, but they might recognize that there's not actually intrinsic value in the equity, they might start to sell them as the price is being artificially driven up by them, right? So they sell it, and then it's sort of like expectations catch up, the stock price drops below to what they purchased for, and people lose money because it's sort of like an artificial value that's not really there. So that's what they're accusing Khamzat of, basically this cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrency, by the way, I do not claim by any means that I understand what actually gives the cryptocurrency value or not, right? I assume it's something almost akin to social media. The more people you have with the asset or the currency, the more valuable it gets. I imagine something along those lines. But bottom line is, they made this coin and they reached out to Khamzat to promote it, which he did. I think he made one video or made several posts, whatever it was. That obviously drove up the value because Khamzat's got such a big following. A lot of people purchased it, end up being around $1 million invested into this currency. And then the main people who created the currency or were holding it, who had large stakes in it, then apparently sold it off. The price basically went to zero, and around $1 million was lost due to this quote unquote pump and dump scam. So I think it's uncontested that this actually did happen. But the question that I think people want to know the answer to is, was Khamzat behind it? Was he trying to scam people? And I think unequivocally no. And before I turn, I'm going to play a video from Khamzat in a second. But Justin, we've talked about this a bunch yesterday. I sent you a couple videos. Like, what is your initial read? I know I'm a much bigger Khamzat fan and follower than you are, but what's your initial feeling about this whole ordeal?
I'd like to think that he's not a part of it. I'd like to think he wouldn't want, name his name, because if he even is a small percentage of knowing, he knows what he's going on, but he doesn't, you know what I mean? Any idea, he just lost his entire fan base. When you have fan base, really expect him not to be a part of it. I really think he's a part of his whole legacy. He's going to ruin his whole career, ruin his whole base, if any of this is even remotely true.
Yeah, and Justin, by the way, you're really cutting in and out. If you could find a better spot, possibly with better reception, I think your signal is pretty bad. So it's kind of going in and out. But anyways, I think what Justin is basically saying is that if this is true, if he was a part of this scam, it would destroy his reputation. I think that we can see that in terms of even what Homework is saying, right? The block asset, what is this, was legit. The other one was completely sketchy. Okay, it would completely ruin his reputation. Now, I've seen pretty much like every interview. I've seen every interview that Khamzat has ever done, and I've watched them multiple times. I really believe in his character. He is my favorite fighter. But the reason why he's my favorite fighter is I feel like when you watch his interviews, he's so super authentic. He wants to help people. He doesn't want to hurt people. He doesn't care about being wealthy and being rich. Let me just play it. So this is why I fervently believe that even though he may have promoted this coin, which maybe he shouldn't have, maybe he made a mistake. And I think the blame look, the blame always rests on anybody who's going to go out there and put their name on something, right? Like, you have to vet these opportunities very carefully. But I don't think he did it intentionally with the intent of scamming people. I absolutely do not think that was the case. I just don't. But hopefully in the future, maybe his manager or whoever's around him who has greater knowledge of these offers will vet them more carefully, and these mistakes will never happen in the future. But let me play this interview for you guys. You guys judge for yourself. But I'm telling you, you can see the authenticity in his interview, in his face and his voice and all that stuff, and judge for yourself. But I think you will indeed agree with me. All right, here we go.
If there's some good fight, some big name, if they give me big money, of course I don't care about that shit now. So I'm coming to here from give the food for my family and help the people. So they're biggest things for me. I doesn't want to be the champ with the this meat talk shit. So like It's about not to, like for me, there are more thing. I want to be the champ for the people, for helping the people. I will be recognizing like Khamzat being helping the people, doing good things. Yeah, I'm crazy guy. I'm doing crazy things in the cage and fighters, fight outside or sometimes some shit is happening as well. Yeah, I think so. I'm the guy who's always gonna go through like hard tough things and gonna help some lot of people with that. So we'll see.
This is essentially the sentiment that we get from Khamzat, I feel, over and over. He wants to be a people to champion. He wants to help people. That's his whole purpose. There was videos long ago that came out of him going out and handing out food to people that were sleeping on the streets. This is his mentality. He's wanted to be active in other global conflicts. So I truly, truly think the last thing on his mind is trying to scam people, moreover, trying to scam his fans. I mean, I just don't believe it. Justin, all right, let's see if your signal's a little better now. Okay, so give me your thoughts on what you just heard, and yeah, tell us what you think.
Well, I mean, it's even if he's involved, even if he is, we'll say he is. I'm not saying he is, but let's pretend he is. I mean, he's going to have the same interview. He's never going to say, "Oh yeah, I'm involved and I want to steal all the money." You know what I mean? Like, but with that being said, yeah, he does want to be the UFC champion, and when you're put under this kind of scrutiny, like that can really, really hurt that, and your possibility of ever getting that title. And even if he did become the champion, I mean, how much support is he going to get from the people? So, I think before I make a decisive opinion, trying to be 50-50 on this. I'm going to wait for more information to come out. It seems like a lot of people are against him. It seems like the stuff I'm reading on social media, a lot of people are saying he is involved. But I'm going to wait some time and see what more information comes out before I make a direct opinion about the situation.
All right, fair enough. And by the way, Homework just threw this out here right now. He said his manager addressed on Twitter and said he's to blame and apologized to Khamzat. And of course, right, it could be him falling on the sword and maybe just trying to salvage his reputation. But like I said, I don't know. That's my opinion. And people can say I'm just getting behind my favorite fighter, this and that. But he's my favorite fighter for a reason, because I do think he's got a good heart and I do think he's got good intentions. That's my feeling. Let us know in the comments below if you disagree. Or in the chat right now, but yeah, I think that's the key. Oh, by the way, Western Mass Climber does say he'd like to see Diaz versus Masvidal on bare knuckle. That'd be cool, but Masvidal's already said he's not going to fight bare knuckle ever again because I think he said something along the lines of it was rough on his hands or whatever when he used to do it back in the day. So I don't think that's going to happen. All right, moving on to topic number 3. We had Darren Till come out in a boxing debut this weekend as well, and he won. But did you see this, by the way? Did you see what happened?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't really know what exactly was going on, but apparently the guy that Darren Till fought, I can't remember the guy's name, but he got a couple like 2 strikes barely to the back of the head, and then he was complaining a lot about it, and then eventually they called it a TKO. Okay, so Darren Till won, and then the guy rushed him and tried to take him down. He tried to wrestle him, which was really funny. I don't know. Like, what's your reaction, first of all?
My reaction is the guy's getting his ass whipped and he found a way out and he took it. Like, the guy is a nobody. He's fighting a great guy like Darren Till. He got rabbit punched to the back of the head. He had this really big dramatic fall down and holding the back of his head. Like, dude, the guy's a fucking pussy, man. It's like he was set in there to get beat up by Darren Till, and he made an ass of himself, like barely touched him in the back of the head. Dude, we have MMA. I've been hit in the back of the head with MMA gloves. I've been hit in the back of the head with elbows. I've been hit in the back of the head with kicks. Like, that's just not how you act, especially with the padded gloves. So the guy's a clown. Congrats to Darren Till. I'm glad Darren Till went in there and did his thing. Glad to see him back in the winning side. Fuck this guy. This guy's a fucking bum.
Yeah, I agree. And also it's great to see Darren Till get back in the winning column. And I'm really curious to see what's next for him. Oh yeah, but also I forgot to mention too, when he went in for the single leg, I mean, it became an all-out brawl. I think that got more media attention, of course, than the fight. But I don't think anybody was seriously hurt. And the guy's name is Abdu Rozik. So yeah, that was a whole ordeal. Maybe it got Darren Till some good press. Excuse me. What would you like to see next for Darren Till? I know he was scheduled to fight, I think, Cesar Chavez Jr., somebody like that, some other boxer on the Jake Paul card, which got scrapped. But what would you like to see from him next? Do you want to see him keep boxing? Do you want to see him go back to mixed martial arts at some point? What do you think?
You know, MMA, he at the end of his MMA career, I'm not saying the end, but his last couple of MMA fights have been rough, man. You know, and MMA is a tough world, especially to get into, man. I'm glad to see Darren Till go into boxing. I'm sure he made a great amount of money in there. He probably made more money boxing than he would in MMA. So really, wherever the payday takes him is where I want to see him. I don't see him coming back into MMA making a ton of money. You know, I mean, when I say a ton, I mean six figures. But boxing, man, the sky's the limit. He's 1-0 now. He might get in there. He might have another six-figure payday, and that's way more money than he'll make in MMA. So, you know, really, wherever the money takes him, I think that's where he's going to go.
You know, and you know what's crazy? Darren Till's been in the game so long. I just looked it up because I just wanted to double check. He's only 31. He's so young still in the game. So he's got a lot of room, I think, to go and do his boxing thing and then maybe eventually come back to MMA. And I know he said over and over that belt is still on his mind. He still believes 100% fervently, adamantly that he's got what it takes to go back and make it happen. Maybe he's got to work on some things in different aspects of his game, but he still believes he's got what it takes. So it'd be cool, I think, for him to eventually come back to mixed martial arts. But yeah, let's see what happens for his next boxing match and go get that money, and that'd be awesome. All right, we're moving on. We're actually already on to our final topic for today. If you guys have any comments you want to throw out in the live stream, anything that else you want us to touch on, we'd be happy to do this. Oh, we got another comment from Homework. Let me see this. Why would he want to scam also when he has money? And if he was ever in need, he's in contact with them. Yeah, 100%. He's not in need. Khamzat, he's talking about Khamzat here. Khamzat is not in need of money. I would bet you, by the way, I'll bet you that Khamzat's probably the type of guy that he sees these people lose money and he probably wants to make them whole. That's just my feeling. I wouldn't be surprised if he himself is like, no, I'd rather just pay these people and make them whole again. I feel terrible about this. And just to right the wrong, I wouldn't be surprised if he's volunteering to do that or would eventually volunteer to do that. Okay. But anyways, let's come back to our final topic here. Michael Chandler apparently was offered Islam in place of the Conor McGregor fight and said no. Now, let me put a caveat here. I don't even know if this is 100% true because there's only one source on this, and I have to play the source because I just don't want you guys to think I'm making totally random stuff up. But we got to take it with a grain of salt. It is Chael. I love Chael, but he said some funny things in the last few months that I think have not been true. One, especially about he was super confident that Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor was going to happen on June 29th. Obviously, that didn't happen. But let me just play you this video, and then we can talk about it, Justin. I want to get your thoughts. If this is true, if you think Michael Chandler made a crazy decision here. Let's check it out.
Right now for a world championship. And I got a description of Michael Chandler versus Islam Makhachev right now for a world championship. And I got to stress it like that because when this first came out, Michael Chandler versus Islam Makhachev, or Michael Chandler was offered Islam Makhachev, it appeared like once upon a time or somewhere along the way of Chandler McGregor. And it turns out, no, it's right now. Michael Chandler right now has an offer on the table, apparently, to take on Islam Makhachev. Makhachev has weighed in and didn't say no. He wasn't all for it. He wasn't like backing the idea or saying you're the true number one contender. It was nothing like that. But he still didn't say no. And I maintained for you guys from the beginning that if Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler does not happen on June 29th, not only will it not happen, it's akin to announcing the retirement of McGregor. He will not be back at a future time. Now, that is a prediction. It's a prediction based on evidence, what's known as a hypothesis, but it's nothing more than that. And I do think it is strengthened. Like the mere idea that there is an offer being presented to Michael Chandler. I hope that Michael Chandler understands. All right, guys, there is a language which is used in every single industry. There is something known as an industry standard.
Okay, I got to stop it because then sometimes Chael goes, I don't even know where he's going. But anyways, this idea, take it with a grain of salt. I just don't know sometimes if Chael's trolling people or if this is real or what. But let's assume it's real. He said he was offered the fight. And apparently, it seems that he's turned down the Islam fight. Let's just say, if this is true, he's turned down the Islam fight because he's still holding out for this Conor McGregor fight. Let me first ask you this. If you were in the position, right, you fight at lightweight, you have the Conor McGregor fight potentially there, but then in place of that, in lieu of that, because it was canceled, they offered you a title shot. Would you turn it down and wait for Conor, or would you go for the title shot?
I'm probably going go for the title shot, because the legacy. And that's why I don't see my handler turning down that opportunity. Not to mention it's going to be incredible paid. So I think just trying out. Been sitting on it.
Hey Justin, it's I'm gonna stop you. It's not coming through at all. It's like super choppy. So maybe wait until I don't know if you're driving right now, but if you get to a point where the signal's a little clear, we can bring you back in. Okay, so I want to hear Justin's opinion in a second when he's able to come back on and have a better signal. But anyways, to me, it's a little bit shocking at this point. If he was given a title shot in lieu of the Conor McGregor fight, which seems to be up in the air, he's waited this long. I don't know. It seems a bit bizarre to me, and I think some of the fans are also turning on Chandler because I just don't know. What's the point at this time for continuing to wait, especially if you're going to get what's supposed to be the most coveted thing, not a money fight, but the title fight. And if you can win, what that could do for you after that point, then you could call out Conor. Who knows? You get pay-per-view points. I mean, these are all big ifs, and obviously you have to take on a massive challenge in Islam. But I've seen Michael Chandler in other interviews before saying that he thinks he's got a great chance against Islam. I mean, supposedly, right? We have to promote ourselves in the fight game, and maybe that's what he's doing. And maybe deep down he doesn't really believe he's got a good shot against Islam. I mean, all these things are possibilities, but it does seem a bit perplexing at this point. If the Conor fight just seems to keep evading him over and over like this, and then he's all of a sudden given not even just an alternative fight, but a title shot. It seems to me that he should potentially even strongly consider it. And if he's not, I don't know. It seems like maybe now he's taken on more risk than is warranted. I understood the decision, I think, for a long time to hold out because there are a lot of massive opportunities that wouldn't compare to other fights. But then a title shot against Islam, who's also very, very popular and has got a massive following. He's the champ, and it can give Chandler one more shot at a title, which otherwise maybe he wouldn't get. I don't know. I feel like if this is true, again, a big if. I don't always know if what Chael is saying is he trolling. It's a weird thing because I feel like he's sometimes said things that don't exactly connect. But if it's true, I'm a bit perplexed. So I think we've lost Justin for today. I think he was driving and the signal wasn't so great. So unfortunately, we won't get to hear his thoughts. Maybe we'll get to hear him on Friday because I do want to know what he thinks. And maybe by Friday, we'll have some more news about what Chandler is indeed doing. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining on this Monday after we haven't had a crazy amount of mixed martial arts and UFC news. We had a lot of other fun stuff and a lot of other interesting things to talk about. Khamzat, going back to you, I believe you adamantly, fervently that you were fooled into this, and then maybe you could have done more due diligence, and maybe it was your team, not really you. I don't know. It is what it is. But I truly, truly don't think he meant to cause people harm. Let's see what happens as the week unfolds and more fact finding is undertaken. But anyways, thank you guys so much. If you haven't liked the video, make sure to click that like button if you did like it. And if you want to see more from the 10-7 MMA show, make sure to click subscribe. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you in the next episode. Take it easy.